Over the past few years, everything has changed. Where and how we work and live, the way we collaborate and measure success, and the emerging technologies we use to get it all done. Welcome to The Bridge. Join our host, Scott Kinka, in a series of discussions with top leaders in technology and learn about how they bridge their lives and their businesses into our new hybrid work and AI-driven reality. Our hope is that the insights and experiences will help you on your journey in business and in life from who we were to who we are today. And maybe it'll help you get better prepared for whatever comes next. The Bridge is a service of Bridgepoint Technologies, the nation's leading IT advisory firm. Bridgepoint helps business leaders evaluate, procure, implement, and manage technology and customer experience solutions with a focus on realizing sustainable results for your business growth. And now, here's your host, Scott Kinka.
It's harder to be cool talking about what's true as opposed to what's new. Talking about what's new is how we show our expertise as technologists, right? New toys, inputs instead of outcomes, which is why it was really fun to talk about changing attitudes towards DR or disaster recovery, among other things, with a self-professed recovering academic and now VP of Alliances and Market Strategy for Expedient, Alvaro Gonzalez. DR of all things, right? Unsexy, but never more necessary. The pandemic showed us that unplanned change should be in our plans. The pandemic showed us that every application is not critical. Shape your costs to your risk. Outcomes first. The new stuff, we'll play within the lab until they can deliver a real outcome. We talked about all kinds of things on this pod. We talked about playing the role of the Godfather at work. We talked about VDI having its day in hybrid work. We geeked out over a ruggedized edge device that they were working on. We talked about running too quickly towards generative AI in content creation. Before we get to it all, if you think we're doing a great job here on The Bridge, be sure to give us a follow, a like, a 5-star rating, or comment on Apple Pod, Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite platform. Alvaro, my guest, is a propeller head, and I really wanted to get geeky. But as the professor does, he wouldn't let me. He kept me focused on outcomes. And I think you'll enjoy the conversation. Here's my chat with Alvaro Gonzalez, VP of Alliance and Market Strategy at Expedient. Welcome to The Bridge. My guest on this episode is Alvaro Gonzalez. He is the AVP of Alliances and Market Strategy for Expedient. Fresh AVP of Alliances and Market Strategy at Expedient, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, right.
How long's it been?
This is week 6 of my new role. I think soon they're going to start to expect me to do something, you know?
We're going to test you in a minute, so don't worry about that. I'm going to ask for the pitch, and we're going to send it to the marketing department to make sure you got it nailed. What does the AVP of Alliances and Market Strategy do at Expedient?
So this is a new role that they created, actually, that I am working with different parts of the business, kind of to be the clutch between our technical side of the house, our marketing side of the house, and our sales side of the house, because I've done all of those functions so that we can go and just find ways to do better work for our customers, right? To translate technical capabilities into the results that the customers are after and help our sellers to kind of like see the pattern earlier, to recognize the sorts of things that are going to be useful to everybody to get the job done. I kind of tell people I'm like Tom Hayden in the Godfather. I'm part of the kind of the consigliere to a bunch of different parts of the business.
Consigliere, I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good way of looking at it. And so I should assume then that effectively the relationship, I mean, make no secret about it, that the companies that we bring onto The Bridge are partners of Bridgepoint Technology. So that sort of governed in your patch now, I guess, is the way for me to think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a channel team that does that. It kind of works with that. I work with them to do all this kind of like strategy, problem solving sort of work.
Fantastic. And okay, so 6 weeks in, you're sitting there in Dayton, Ohio?
Yeah, correct. Uh-huh.
All right. How long have you been in Ohio in?
So, I grew up here, but my wife and I moved to the area in 1999 when I was in a different profession than I'm in now for 3 years. but then we kind of, put down roots and never moved away. So
fantastic. And that's not where Expedient is headquartered.
no, headquarters is in Pittsburgh, which for a Bengals guy is not the easiest thing to deal with, but
I can imagine. We have quite a bit of NFL banter on the pod here. I was, as an Eagles fan, forced to have an episode with a Kansas City fan the week before the Super Bowl. Needless to say, my prediction didn't come true. So that happens. Show us the cup. Show us the cup. Show the Pittsburgh fans the cup. Just do it.
There we go. That's right. We got to.
I love everything about that. Wear your stripes, literally and figuratively. No, I appreciate that. So, I mean, before we get into, people that listen to the pod know that we certainly will do a lot of tech talk, and we're going to obviously give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about Expedient, but just take a step back and tell us more. You and your wife moved to Cincinnati, but give me the story. You personally, kids, what you like to do, read us something back.
Yeah. So, people are always surprised to find out that actually, this is I guess a second career for me, more or less. I was a college professor. I did a doctorate in Spanish language and literature before doing all of this. And so moved to the area for that. Once I realized, though, that kind of being poor wasn't my favorite thing in the world, I got into the technology stuff. I was always super into, the tech stuff. But I am blessed to have my wife. We're coming up on 28 years together. And two kids. My daughter just graduated from high school, turned 18, and had her first fender bender wreck this week. So, lots of achievements. And
it's a rite of passage, Alvaro. It's a rite of passage.
I had black hair. Yeah.
Is she the oldest? The one that just graduated?
She's the oldest. Yeah.
And what's next for
her? Loyola, Chicago. She's going to go study environmental science and biochem. So
she's not smart at all then?
No, she gets it from her mother.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so now that you're you're certainly not done parenthood, but it's a different kind of parenthood. You're at Expedient and 6 weeks in. So let's hit you with the, before I go there, hang on. Let me ask you just a little bit of something personal. Maybe we can dig back to it.
All right.
We usually ask this at the end of the episode. I'm going to ask it up front. Give us some, what are you reading right now? Is there something, in business or fiction or something along those lines that's caught your attention?
So I'm the ultra nerdiest person you're ever going to meet. I have 2 books going right now. Okay. One of them, because I'm a recovering academic, I tell people, right? I'm reading Grit, the Angela Duckworth book with my daughter. We're doing a chapter a day. We talk about it every night. What did you read today? And then we just recently did an event with David Linthicum, who I think is a super fascinating guy. It was awesome to get to meet him. I'm reading his new book, Insider's Guide to Cloud. So
Insider's Guide to Cloud.
Yeah.
Now, that's kind of wild. Is it a recently penned book?
Yeah, I think it just published in April of this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
What makes it so interesting? I mean, there's so many books about cloud. Is there any part of the approach that is kind of piquing your attention?
Yeah, the thing about it is that there's so many people who I think want to come at this from a tech first perspective, like, oh, you should be doing every shiny object that's out there because it's cool. And other people who are like, well, you should be repatriating everything because cool isn't whatever. And he actually, he's been doing this stuff for a long time. He's the lead cloud strategy guy for Deloitte, among other things. And so he's kind of right in the middle. He kind of is, has arguments about this is how you do decision making. This is how you really do strategy. And that's like my super fascination, actually, is the problem solving and the strategy, the outcome, not the input. And that's why I'm a pretty big fan of what's in this book and the kind of work he does. It's about the outputs. It's not about the inputs. It's about the customer, I guess you'd say, not about the tech. Which I think is fantastic.
We talk quite a bit about on the podcast with a lot of our guests about, by the way, I love that you said shiny objects. It was in my teaser on the last episode. I was talking about, let's not be so focused on shiny balls. Let's be focused on customers. We have such a tendency in this industry to get obsessed with the tech.
Yeah.
Sometimes to the detriment of actually solving a problem. Fair assessment. How do you feel about that statement?
Yeah, I mean, the thing of it is, and like I know this from my prior career, like in higher ed too, like, listen, people make you, if your identity is you're supposed to be an expert, the way that you exert and you show expertise is you get into all the stuff that is new, all the stuff that's different, as opposed to focusing on all the stuff that's true, right? I think it's harder to be cool talking about what's true as opposed to what's new. But I've been a seller and an SE in everything. Right? I started in cable, I did telco, I did colo, I did cloud, I did consulting for a while. And that's the trap you fall into. People want you to be an expert. And how do you be an expert? You talk about the stuff that's new. It's a
Yeah,
trap, right?
I get it. It's completely a trap. And that was a hot take. I can see our producer Gene scribbling something down in the background. That's definitely going to end up. That's going to end up in the marketing of this episode at some point, I'm sure. All right, now it's test time, Alvaro. If
Okay.
you're ready.
Yeah, here we go.
So tell us about Expedient and the marketing department's watching after 6 weeks. Let's see how you do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Expedient, for those of you who don't know us very well, is a colo cloud and services company that operates 14 facilities in 10 cities from essentially Phoenix to Boston. We have real deep expertise in VMware powered clouds, but with Nutanix on board as well. We have real deep expertise in actually kind of like a number of different, what some people find kind of nichey technologies along the way. But like one of the things that's so different and interesting about Expedient is it's a company of practitioners all the way up to the CEO, so that we have a very nice kind of like integrated set of capabilities around data center and just the server applications. Like Edge is a big thing for us right now that let us get involved in difficult customer problems and help them to get to simplicity, help them to focus on the things that actually ring the cash register for them, as opposed to worrying about applications, data protection, DR, all of these things, right? It's like other companies in the industry, some of which I've worked for, but it's also different in that like all kinds of people here have strategy titles, and it turns out it's because this is a company profoundly invested in problem solving and strategy, which is a very fun place to be.
Yeah, sounds like the some of the lessons that you like in the book that we were just discussing, right?
Absolutely right. Yeah, yeah.
Right tool for the right job kind of thing. So is it the outcomes based focused across a broader set of capabilities that you find to really sort of be the superpower, right? You've got all the tools, but
Yes.
it's not so much about the tools, it's about the fact that you have all of them and I like what you said, practitioner focused, kind of
Right.
building customized solutions on a customer by customer basis.
So yeah, let me give you an example of what some of the tools
Yeah,
are.
please.
For example, like one that's different about here is part of all of our customer facing stuff is based on Morpheus is one of the tools that we use that allows us to aggregate information about multiple different environments, whether we provide them or not. Think, VMware, Azure, GCP, all of this stuff can all be aggregated to be seen into this so that you can actually have IT estate that you didn't get from Expedient that can be brought into monitoring and visibility and governance, things like that. That I think that it's easy for lots of providers who grew up in the space to build out stuff within the moat, right? Like all of the tool sets that are related to only the things that you were doing. Here, we started kind of from the outcomes from the customer first, and then maybe we'll provide the infrastructure. Sometimes they will have things they didn't buy from us, but we're going to make it easier to do better, to be faster, to adapt, to operate your business well, and to take away silos as opposed to imposing them on people. Stuff like that I think is super attractive and a learning curve for new people here like me.
Yeah, completely. I
Yeah.
mean, I took a look at your website again this morning just to refresh,
Yeah.
some of the things that I already knew. And I found a couple things interesting popped off the page for me. Let me just read them back to you, and I'm
All
just
right.
curious what your thoughts are.
All right.
One was VDI. I mean, generally, that was a market a lot of people ran into.
Yep.
Um, it's a market I have some intimate knowledge
Of
with
course. Right. Yeah.
from Hawaii, right? Um, And this giant universe of VDI and DAS players, right, sort of got really skinny really fast because it's hard. I mean, it
Mhm.
just end user computing, all the complexity in server computing is quadrupled in end user computing in a lot of ways. And it's hard to be an infrastructure provider that's providing an end user focused product.
Right.
I found that unique. You mentioned VMware. Is
Mhm.
that sort of part of that whole VMware, that your Horizon shop, your
We
focus
are
there? Is that,
Horizon.
tell me a little bit more about the VDI product.
Yeah. So this is one of those things, actually. And again, like lots of companies talk about being customer led. We probably in 2020 were not necessarily very deeply invested in end user compute at all, but the customers that we have and the market that was out there actually brought to us this desire to say, gosh, we love the experience we get from Expedient and other things. How about you do this? And so that was really the genesis of us getting into that business, so that we could say, again, like if we sort of, and it's my version really of like a corporate focus, but is to say, you take complexity away, you let people realize the benefit of the money that they're spending. That's how the VDI focus really started to come in there. So
And
like,
that's hybrid work. I mean, I think you said 2020. That's interesting. I mean, that it's hybrid work focused, right? I mean,
yeah,
I've said to many of our customers, I feel like the sort of advent of true hybrid work,
yep,
right? I mean, let's face it, most businesses had, I don't know, you've got a DR business, which I think this is probably pertinent in as well, which we'll come back to. But, most businesses were probably positioned for about 20% of their workforce being remote at any given time
yep,
pre-pandemic. And then post-pandemic, we're hybrid work to me means you're 100% remote and 100% in the office. You're sort of building two IT stances or having to do that,
right.
on a go forward basis. So the VDI stance for you guys is sort of based around hybrid work. I think it sounds like customer led.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's a rabbit hole that we don't have to go down, but I'll tell you the thing that, like 2020 and the pandemic and all of this stuff driving change. My wife works for an investment bank, and they
Mm-hmm.
went from hybrid work from remote is not a thing at all, to 15 to 20,000 employees all working remote in like a 7-day period. It was utterly
It's
insane
crazy, right?
what they managed to do. And you had like lots of bumps along the way. Lots of people went into all of that and had unplanned change, which had like lots of downstream consequences. But still, in all, like, yeah, look, that, all the statistics that you see, and we saw it like in our basement here at home with my wife and my kids were all working from home during that period of time. Like, you can accelerate years of change into a really short period of time if the or else is big enough.
Yeah, if the aura, yeah, I mean, there needs to be that sort of impending moment in some of these cases, right? I recently did a talk with Frost and Sullivan where we had a think tank conversation, and we were back and forth on the difference between evolution and revolution in technology, right? And I think
Mhm.
a lot of what we're dealing with is revolution, just because there was this gigantic impending event.
Yeah.
You mentioned Morpheus earlier, and of course, my brain immediately went to the Matrix, right? I
Right.
I I'm fascinated with the end user computing conversation, which I know is just a portion of what it is that you guys do. But
Yeah.
one closing thought on it is, I just say all the time that this is sort of the blue pill, red pill moment for end user computing, right? Because you've basically got to decide either you're going to be exceptional at
Yep.
securing at the endpoint as opposed to securing at the network perimeter, right? We send people home, and you could paper over a lot of bad policies when the only time you turned on PCs were when they were in the office, right? But now
Yep.
you're in this mode of like, I've got to be really good at everything and managing endpoints, or it's the throw your hands up and say F it moment, right? And you go VDI or you go DAS, and you're like, you go that route. I'm imagining, you guys very prescriptively say VDI as a service. So it's really an infrastructure product for you, as opposed
Mhm.
to sort
Mhm.
of a selling it on a piece by seat basis. You're basically selling it as VDI infrastructure along with the rest of your VMware stack. Is that a fair way for me to think about it?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, I think that problems that get solved at scale are the ones that are important. Those are the ones that are valuable.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really something that would be, a strategy and not a tactic. I guess I would say, not doing onesie twosie kind of stuff, um, because that's just not generally a good
Yeah.
place for the business to be, really. So,
Sure.
Yep.
Well, the other thing that I think most of us didn't think too much about before the advent of hybrid work, right? Or at least the lack of importance of the office's DR. I mean, that's another thing that popped off the page as I was going through the site this morning. You guys are, Gartner recognized on the DR side.
Yes.
Is that a kind of post-pandemic focus, or was that always sort of in the DNA? And tell us a little bit more about that product line for you guys.
Yeah, so I mean, from a focus perspective, no, that was there all along. Like actually, one of the companies, and it's been over 10 years ago, that was ingested or acquired, I guess, to build Expedient was Enframe, that had
Okay.
already pretty good expertise in that, and that's been years and years ago. But the work that we've done there, the trick about it is lots of people get into DR and they have pretty narrowly focused and not rapidly changing capabilities. Here, we do tons of work in, for example, the Zerto infrastructure
Yeah.
business. We do tons of work, though, in other platforms as well. The VMware flavor of VCDA. We do lots of really great work with Cohesity around that, where again, for lots of people, like there's a promise that you can make about tiered DR so that your high value applications you treat more, you treat hot better, shorter RTOs and RPOs, and your lower stuff isn't so much, so that you shape up cost. And I think that there are many companies maybe that are not as accomplished in delivering on that talk track as we are, to be able to tier together, a 15-minute window with an hour window with a 4-hour window. And that's something that for us has been real ongoing around that. I'll tell you, though, the thing about, and it ties a couple of these points together, actually, the pandemic thing, and I touched on unplanned change. Unplanned change driving DR, and this was something that changed a number of things for us, like for others as well, is, people had to do things quickly. And what it means is you don't necessarily get to plan stuff well. What you saw was a huge upswing in like ransomware or in unintended consequences that drove people to use DR, not buy it alone, right? But to use it a heck of a lot more, because, buying it is one thing, but using it, that was a thing that was really up during the pandemic period of time. Again, when you got to change everything quickly, when you got to get into really untested waters, your ability, your exposure, I guess, to making mistakes goes up. That was the case for all kinds of people. It was a great opportunity for us to do well by doing good, right? To be there
Yeah.
for people, to execute on it, and to add more capabilities like getting some immutability, getting 3-2-1 backup schemes, and that sort of thing in place to help people deal with all of that unexpected, unplanned change.
Yeah. And look, in a lot of ways, I think we all got a little bit of a pass during the
Yeah,
pandemic. You scrambled, and so we all knew we were expanding, and frankly opening, the security risks
yeah,
into the business, but you had to operate.
right, of course. Yeah,
And it's funny. I mean, when we think about security, there's always this, like, you talk about compliance, and I talk to customers all the time, and I'm like, listen, compliancy doesn't imply that there's any expectation of you being perfect. There's only an expectation in compliancy that you have a plan, that you can execute on a plan, and that you can recover from the inevitable event. I mean, you
right.
know what I mean? The really well focused bad state actor is going to find a way in. The question is, are you prepared to recover when you get there? Particularly as I said, you said you sort of spread out in a very undisciplined fashion just to get back to work in
Yeah.
2020, and we're still hardening, I guess, in a lot of ways, right?
I tell you something that, yeah, like we are seeing more people be taking up microseg, for example, like all of these things that used to seem like a pretty good idea, but they were a little academic. And now microsegmentation across different things, so it's not just a VMware thing. Like we work with a company, Color Tokens, that is really cool because it takes this ability to do something so elementary, really, but as not just north south, but east west stuff in your environment,
Mm-hmm.
and do it across not just a VMware thing. Um, Interesting, valuable. Like sometimes it's Kaizen, like little incremental improvements that you make can make such a big difference.
Yeah,
And, yeah,
amazing. And we talked. I mean, these were all things that some of them came from the pandemic. Some of them, like the edge or the end user computing.
yeah,
Some of it, maybe became more in practice, like the DR practice.
Yep.
Are there other product areas that, are sort of new, sort of genesis from the changing way we work that have become a lot of focus for you and the Expedient team?
There's one that's like I'm personally really excited about, and as I'm gearing up to be out now and talking with people, it's going to be it's a big part of my role. But you talk about rate of change of things and pandemic, hybrid work, all of this was part of it. We have gotten to the point where we have rolled out, it went GA in March, this Edge offering that we are doing that allows
Okay.
people to take beyond. Like Edge for a lot of people is like, oh, it's at a data center that is 30
It's
miles away,
close. Yeah,
right? It's
exactly.
close. It's not, but like we're on the edge of the edge in that we're now able to locate infrastructure on customer prem, and we're doing it in a little, it's form factor. It's kind of wild. It could actually fit into the overhead bin on an airplane. Like you just put it in there. It's a ruggedized chassis. They can scale out 4 nodes at a time that you can put on a shop floor because it is temperature resistant, power conditioning, cost effective, all this stuff. And so for people who are doing manufacturing roles where you have fewer headcounts, you have more pressure on the business to do more with less. How are you going to run your savagely expensive industrial equipment that's controlled by compute stuff? If you do it remotely, network takes you down, and you can,
Yeah.
have massive issues of cost, runaway costs that you can't produce against. This is something, this edge thing that we're having really big success with right now because we can help you with the FTEs to have people on site or the downtime of getting people to there to deal with this stuff, or locations where you don't have environmentals to handle this, but you want to aggregate and act on data that's locally. This edge thing for us is a really big thing that I'm very excited about because, again, I told you, like I'm A, super nerdy, and B, really fascinated with the problem solving strategy thing. And like, how do you take limited resources and get to a big payoff for the use of them? And this is a really great one that's solving dirty, ugly, intractable problems that people have that can include VDI on-prem, which we can do, data protection on-prem, which we can do, and like
Got
all
it.
the other production workloads downstream from it. Like I think maybe you could tell, right? My propeller head is
Yeah,
spinning.
yeah, you're getting giddy about it. I dig it. And like to me, I think the big difference, which is interesting, right? And I love that you said I want to harken back to this because we've had some episodes where we've, this edge concept is becoming I shouldn't say it's a new concept, right? We just name things differently when we need them more,
Right.
right? So
Right.
I think that's kind of where edges come from. But in a lot of ways, when people think edge, they're thinking about moving computing for certain elements closer,
Yep.
than core cloud. Okay, I get that.
Yep.
You've taken it a step further, though, I think is the way for me to think about it, right?
Yeah.
Generally speaking, you think edge and you go, I think you use the 30 miles away kind of model.
Yeah.
Bring it
Right.
to a data center that's closer.
Right.
And yes, I'm still operating at WAN speed, but I've got, mega controllable latency. So that's certainly a plus up by
Sure.
getting it further
Absolutely
out.
right.
But
Yep.
what you're saying is you're taking edge all the way to the edge with sort of a containerized. I'm using the phrase that I'm using
Yeah.
it the wrong way. Physically containerized, not
Right.
just logically containerized.
Yep.
Compute environment that's sort of in a suitcase, right? I think what was the word you used earlier on our pre-call? I think you said ruggedized.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. 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 So
Okay.
it's all flash. So it could be around vibrating stuff. It can also.
Exactly. No spinning media. You're not worried about it breaking down. Like you
Yeah.
could pop it up on a desk.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
That's really interesting. And you said March this rolled out. It's June when we're
Yeah.
recording this, probably July when we drop it. So only a couple months, but going well so far.
Very well. Very well. Very well. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We've
Thinking
had
about IoT applications, like yeah,
POCs and like it's in. Because you think about like the use case right now that like I was just talking with a customer and a partner who worked together to solve a problem. I got it up on my wall here because I've been thinking about it. 12 remote locations in all kinds of different places outside of their core network where they have millions and millions of dollars of production equipment. They manufacture stuff, right? So
yeah,
like if they have downtime with the control and the telemetry around that, it's not a matter of, oh, I spent $3,500 on my compute stuff and I can't use it. It is all the payroll, all the people, all the
Yeah.
downstream implications of you can't make the stuff, so you can't ship the stuff, so that your logistics are hosed, all the downstream stuff that flows from it. That's like super powerful. But you could do similar things for local survivability, for if you are a healthcare provider that has satellite clinics, like it could almost literally be life and death. All of those use cases that, I have spent the last 10 years in the industry saying no because I didn't have an answer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's the part about it that like it feels so good. It
Super
feels so,
interesting.
yeah.
Okay, well that's really cool. And my propeller, I got the nerd propeller going in my head on that as well. Just a different way of thinking about Edge, which is a really cool thing. I had one more question before we kind of get to the wrap up fun, which is
Yeah.
I know that you guys do quite a bit around Microsoft. You're doing, in this sort of hybrid cloud model around
Mhm.
Colo and around your own cloud and DR and desktop as well.
Yep.
But we oftentimes get into what does Microsoft mean in your ecosystem, right? Aside from just being the people who made Azure, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Friend or foe in your world, like what? I mean, you're the alliances guy. How do you think? How
Right.
do you think about Microsoft?
So it's interesting, that we are contiguous to Microsoft. So like we do a very healthy SPLA business, right? Like anything that you need licensing for that you can consume on that kind of by the drip that's in our infrastructure, we're here for that. We can be very helpful to you. We certainly don't see ourselves as being adversarial towards any of the public cloud providers, and certainly not Azure. The way that we interact with that will be, for example, we have great capabilities around Cohesity to complement and back up, for example, your OneDrives, all your things that are in Microsoft 365 that people have sometimes the unreasonable, it's wrong expectation that's being protected. We can support that. Working
Mhm.
with our operations control suite is what we call it. That is the way that we use, like we took Morpheus as part of the tool set and all of this. You can be a customer that is purchasing stuff from Azure, from others yourself, but we can actually extend our monitoring into it. We can help you with cost governance and visibility and all of this stuff, pulling back into that. We can help with some of the other like silo things. We can put the endpoint protection into there. We can help you with OS patching on an automated thing, so that like we're not today selling Azure infrastructure. Today we're not even selling Microsoft 365 infrastructure, but we are helping to make it better by solving, like buying it isn't generally the problem that people have. It's understanding what's going on with
Yeah,
it, using it, and that's an area where we're leaning in. We do, like we're friendly with them, but we're not reselling all of their stuff right now. We're just helping the areas where there are things that
sure.
they don't want to do for customers, and we are.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, right? I mean, that's not an organization that necessarily, I don't want to say they don't care. They're not architected to make sure that you're a good user of their stuff,
Of
right? In a
course.
lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
ways. And they're super partner friendly. I mean, if you talk to anybody on the Microsoft side of the house, it's one of the reasons why I always laugh at getting that question. I'm like, why don't you ask them? Because they're going to tell you, you know, a partner makes $9 for every dollar they make, right? Like
Yeah.
they're very conscious about what they are and what they aren't. So, but I did have to slide that one in there since you had Microsoft prominently kind of positioned on the website. This has been a great, Alvaro. I want to have ask you just a couple fun questions before we wrap.
Okay.
So the first one is I'm going to ask you for a shameless prediction. Could be business related, maybe not so much about Expedient. Let's just keep it like industry or technology related. But if
Yeah.
you want to go into sports, the Bengals next year, politics, whatever, I mean, just throw something on the table and we're going to look at this in a year or 18 months and see how right you were.
Okay. So yeah, I would say that I'm not going to go to politics. Like, no thanks. Like we can talk about religion.
Damn it, I baited you and you didn't go. All right, we were just looking for something people were going to click on. No, I'm kidding. Fire away.
Bengals are going to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 years, and it won't be the only one they're going to win. My
Okay.
Buckeyes are also going to put a crack in that SEC supremacy.
All
Um,
right.
that is coming. And I think that a lot of people are going to learn some hard lessons about how they ran into generative AI stuff without thinking about it too hard. Right. That's my other big
Okay.
one. Like people really want to give away in my, like recovering academic here, right?
Yeah, I
People
get
give
you.
away responsibility sometimes for producing messaging, for doing this stuff, for getting the understanding behind producing the messaging. And I think that a lot of people, a subset of people, right, they're going to be generating a bunch of content coming out of these engines that even they don't understand. And someday someone's going to say, what do you mean by whatever that thing was? They won't be able to explain it. That's my tech prediction, that people will like retract from that a little bit. It'll be awesome. It'll be useful, but not
Yeah.
as awesome and not as useful as a lot of people want it to be.
I've been thinking about, the AI topic, whether the company's focused on AI or not, has come up on almost every one of these pods. And,
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out a good format for us on that. But as a recovering academic, I love the way you said that. I call myself a recovering CTO, by the way, so I totally appreciate that.
Right.
But as a recovering academic, I have some ideas on this, so we might be dipping back into you. I'm winking at my producer. I'm winking at our producer over here. I have an idea on it, but we've been getting a lot of requests around doing a deep dive discussion just on generative AI. AI in general, like what is it? What really is it? Why are we so afraid of it? Is our irrational fear, or is it irrational fear being sci-fi driven, or is there, what areas do we really have to fear? How's it created? How's it informed? And then really just sort of the kind of informed AI versus sort of generative AI.
Right.
I know informed AI necessarily isn't the way to describe it, but I think you get where I'm going. Like contained AI versus wide open generative AI, and just sort of getting into a debate on that. I think maybe there's a format for that, and I shouldn't be riffing on camera on this, but I'm going to chat with Gene after this. If we do that, I'm inviting you now.
I'd love it. I'd love it. Absolutely.
So it sounds like, and maybe we'll get you on with some AI nerds who that's their product, and we can really go at it a little bit. Okay, so that's good. I love that one. Just one, and this is a totally fun one. So let's just assume that the robots do take over, right? And there's one app that's still running on your phone in this dystopian future. What's your gotta have?
This is not going to reflect well on me, but it might have to be Open Table. Like, in this and that, I'm going to have one last shot at my favoriteest restaurant in the world. Like, I will have a good table at a time of my choosing. Open Table might have to be the one.
Okay,
Yeah.
You know what? I mean, you're truly embracing the end of the world with that answer, but it's a great one. Like, if it's truly over, if Skynet is truly descending, it's probably time to have a banging bottle of wine and a really serious plate of food. So,
gin martini stirred, not shaken, please.
Hey, man, I know where you come from, and I appreciate that. That's fantastic. Well, listen, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time. If our listeners are super interested in what you're talking about, particularly around, that edge conversation, obviously we would love for them to work with their friendly neighborhood Bridgepoint strategists, but how can they find out a little bit more about Expedient?
Yeah, so of course there is the website, and then one of the projects I'm working on as well is actually raising the bar, the content that we make available to the Bridgepoint strategists to get into this conversation. That's a big deliverable from me in the next 60 days. Okay. So, the website, certainly I'm out there on LinkedIn. I'd be delighted to talk to anyone with questions. Saad is a rock star on your team, and I just spent some time with him in Denver. Okay. So, all the above,
I agree with you on Saad being a rock star. So we'll make sure to add his LinkedIn to the show notes here as well, so people can look up our resources. Hey, I really appreciate the time, and looking forward to catching up with you and the listeners on a future episode. 5-star us online, do all those things. We're really excited about you joining us, to the listeners here on the bridge, and hopefully we'll be able to see you soon in another episode.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, everybody.
Listen, if you made it this far, there must have been some good content, or you're just a fan or a relative of mine. In either case, we appreciate you spending your most valuable asset with us, your time. We don't take that lightly. We'd also like to say one more time that we're appreciative of Bridgepoint Technologies and their belief and sponsorship of this show. We hope that if you or someone you know is thinking about your company's digital transformation, or simply the next IT project that you may not have the resources, budget, or time to get to, I'm sure that Bridgepoint, one of the country's fastest growing technology advisory and procurement firms, can help. Check out bridgepointtechnologies.com. Don't forget the E on Bridgepoint, or simply reach out to me at Skinka, SKINKA, at bpt3.net. Also take a minute, please, if you would, to give us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. It helps give us the visibility to reach other people like you. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bridge. I'm Scott Kinka, and until next time, there's a lot of noise out there in business and in life. Do what you can to be the signal. Thanks.